Hello and welcome to How to Run a Successful Business and Still Have a Life. My name is Stacey Morgan and today's episode is brought to you by my Get Your Groove Back workshop. It's happening on February 8th. If you're feeling like so many of us are in that you are lacking motivation, the year has not gone off to the great start that you thought it was going to, then join us because we're going to be talking all things motivation, all things getting your groove back, all things getting back on track so that you can jump straight back in and make this year your very best ever. You can register now at simplystacymorgan.com. Well, you may be able to hear it in my voice, but I've had a couple of weeks off podcast episode recording. Luckily that I batched everything before I fell ill, but yes, the spicy cough has got me. And so you can feel it and hear it in my voice, I'm sure. It's been a rough couple of weeks. And I know that I'm not the only one that's been under the pump a little bit and feeling not so great. There are things that need to be done. There's a to-do list that needs to exist. There is a family that needs nurturing and loving and taking care of, and I haven't been at my best to do it. And so I thought I'd talk today about the notion of balance and the notion of balance being absolute rubbish. So today's episode is called Balance is BS. And the reason I think that is because for so many of us, we think about balance in a really unrealistic way. We think about balance in terms of how do we get, a nice, fair, equal amount of everything in every day. Equal when it comes to our work, equal when it comes to our family, equal when it comes to time for us. And I'm here to call that out and say absolutely not. I don't like the term balance. Balance gives you the indication that things are equal, that things are, on a set of scales and you can go up and down on either side. But at the end of the day, everything is equal. And if you live a life and if you run a family and if you're also nurturing a business, then you know that everything is not equal. Sometimes things are not fair. Things are not going to go your way. And at this point in our existence, this point in what's going on in the world, I know that you're feeling that too. So instead of thinking about life and how you're going to get through your workday and how you're going to get, your kids to bed at night and everybody fed and all the things done that need to get done around the house, instead of thinking about that in terms of balance, in terms of all things being equal, in terms of having, a nice mix every day of all the things, I encourage you instead to think about that notion in terms of blending and in terms of blending things together, because it's so freeing to be able to think about all of the things that you need to do on a daily basis without thinking about having to balance it all and having to juggle it. Even the notion, like even that visual of balance, gives you I get a visual of a tightrope walker, holding a stick up on a high wire. And sometimes that's what life feels like, right? But it's unrealistic for us to think that it's going to be perfect every day. So when I think about blending, I'm thinking about doing what I can to spend the time where I am, really spending it in that. So if I'm with the kids, I'm playing Lego on the floor, then I'm really in that. If I'm making dinner, then I'm really in that. If I'm hanging the washing out on the line, then I'm really in that. I'm trying not to be physically somewhere and mentally somewhere else. And I think that really helps me get a clearer understanding of where I'm spending my time and how I can blend those things together. So I encourage you, if you don't have a meditation practice that works for you in terms of how you get through those days and how you get through those moments, I really, really encourage you to come up with something, because it's not just about being on the floor playing Lego with the kids. It's about really being there. And if you find that your mind is wandering off, then that's the perfect time to be able to bring in that meditation practice, to take a breath in and out, to, look around you and spot and name some things. Whatever works for you is really, really helpful in being able to be centered and to be able to be exactly where you are in that moment. And it's so incredibly powerful when you can actually spend the time doing what you're doing and doing it in the moment, rather than constantly be thinking about what is happening next and where I need to be next and where I'm going to and how long it's going to take me to get there. Because, life unfolds. These things unfold. If we need to be at the dentist at 6 o'clock, we'll be at the dentist at 6 o'clock. The amount of rushing and craziness that happens before that is sometimes inevitable, but it's something that if you are in the moment at all times, then at least you know that you're making the very best use of that time that you have. So let's talk about blending these things together and the notion of blending your week rather than trying to balance your week. Now, you know better than anyone that there is not going to be an equal amount of time shared between your family and your house duties and running your business and, spending time with your partner every single day. But I like to create my own ideal week so that I can have a look at that week and get a sense of blending each of these things together during that week. I think it's unrealistic to try and do it over 24 hours. And I think that's when so much of that mum guilt creeps in, right? So much of that, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I could be doing this right now. That creeps in when we're playing Lego on the floor and our mind wanders. It's because that's where we're going. That's where it's taking us, straight to that mum guilt. It's so easy to do. But instead, you're able to be so much more present in the things that you're doing if you know what is coming up in the future, and you have an understanding that whilst it might not be exactly all the things that you want to do in the next 24 hours, that by the time you get to the end of the week, there will be a nice range of things that have been on your schedule. And that takes planning. It doesn't just happen. You don't just kind of take 3 deep breaths and click your fingers and everything happens miraculously. You need to be conscious about it. You need to be really thinking about it. And so the way I find that blend is, I'm a visual person. So for me, I break my calendar down into colors. I break it down into, time I'm spending with the kids, time I'm spending with my partner, time I'm spending on myself. Yes, on myself. That actually goes in the calendar too. And, we've talked about flamingo time before on the podcast. And if you haven't checked out my episode on flamingo time, I think it's perhaps the one that people talk about more than anything at all. It's episode 22. And if you scroll back to September the 8th from 2021, that's when it aired. But if you haven't listened to that, then please go and do so. But I know that I can be so much more conscious in the things that I'm doing if I have a really clear visual understanding of what my week looks like at the start of the week. And also I can look back on it, through the past week, and I can go, okay, that makes sense. I did spend this amount of time with the kids. I did spend this amount of time doing things for myself, and I did spend this amount of time working on my business. So for me, that's as easy as a spreadsheet. And I love Laura Vanderkam's worksheets that she gives out for you. You can get them at lauravanderkam.com. The amount of people I point towards lauravanderkam.com on a weekly basis is crazy, but she's really the queen when it comes to time management. And I love her book. She's got a new book coming out this year, which I can see her writing on Instagram, and I'm getting excited about already. And so for me, it's about coloring in those little squares, the spreadsheet of the week, what that looks like. How much time I'm spending with the kids goes in orange. How much time I'm spending on myself goes in the flamingo color. The time I'm spending at the studio and teaching goes in blue. The time I'm spending coaching goes in yellow. And when I can color in my week at the beginning of the week and have a look and see the way that those different obligations are blending in together and are kind of cross-referencing it across the entire week, so that I can see before it happens, I can see, okay, there's not enough orange in this week. What am I going to do about that? What needs to be moved or shifted in order for me to have a little bit more orange time, so that I don't get to the end of the week and go, oh, I'm a terrible mom. I didn't spend any time with the kids. I missed the kids at assembly last week, and, I start beating myself up about it. And that can be such a big game changer, especially if you're somebody who's prone to mum guilt like I am. So if you haven't thought about that, and if that's not something that you've really implemented into your world, I totally encourage you to do it. The planning of your ideal week, the coloring of the little squares that shows you where you're spending your time or gives you an understanding of where you want to spend your time, so that by the time you get started, by the time the week kicks off, you know exactly that if you're on the floor playing Lego with the kids right now, you can really, really be there, because you know that later on there's going to be time put aside for you to be working on your business. There's going to be time later on for you to have a bubble bath, because you've planned your week accordingly. And it really, gives a good kick up the bum to that notion of balance, and that we should all have balance, and we can all have balance. When we blend the things in our week that are important to us, it gives us not only a better understanding of where we're spending our time, but it also enables us to give ourselves a bit of grace to be able to see visually where all of our time is going, how we're spending our time, and then to make conscious choices about exactly how we want to do that and go about that. So if you're feeling the pressure, if you're thinking, my life is so out of balance, I'm feeling out of balance, I encourage you, stop using that word. I've taken it completely out of my vernacular. Not that you know from the last 10 minutes of me talking about it, but it's not something that I talk about anymore. It's not something that I use because I know that the notion of it itself is absolute BS. It's not realistic, and it's not something that's going to be helpful to me or to the people around me for me to continue talking about. So I will continue blending my week. I encourage you to blend your week as well. I encourage you to plan out your week so that you know exactly where you're spending your time, so that you can see what the blend looks like. You can see those colors of the rainbow and see where you're spending your time. And then you can make good conscious choices about exactly where you want to spend it. If you want to spend more time at work, sure, color in some extra squares, make that time for yourself. If you want to spend some more time working on you, doing your own personal development, reading those books that you've bought but you haven't written, then it's not going to change unless you actually make changes. So grab your colored markers and put in some more flamingo time for yourself. If you want to spend some more time and reconnect with your partner, put that in your calendar, make sure that is a priority and make sure that it happens. That's the only way that you'll see the differences that you want. And it's the only way that you'll actually get to see that blend in action. If you want to talk more about balance and blend and all of the things that go along with that, then we're going to be talking about that in my workshop, because it is time to get your mojo back. I don't know about you, but there are so many people feeling really overwhelmed, really lethargic, lacking that motivation to really kick 2022 into gear. And I want to help you with that. I want to make sure that you have all the tools that you need in order to get your groove back, to really kind of step up to the things that you promised yourself at the beginning of 2022 that this year was going to bring for you. If you register for the workshop and you come along live, you go into the chance to win a poolside coaching session with me this year at the Simply Business Summit. I love this time of year, and especially because of the fabulous weather, but I'm so looking forward to having a nice little retreat in the middle of the year with fabulous weather as well. If you want to join us, the Simply Business Summit is happening in June. And of course, we would love to have you there, but I would love to see you for our workshop. If you feel like you need your mojo back, then please come and join us. And as I said, if you turn up live, you'll go in the chance to win a poolside coaching session with me. And, I just cannot wait for that. Cocktail in hand, business planning. It's going to be something special. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. If you haven't already, please make sure you like us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to the podcast. If you got something out of this and you know other mums who would also love to take on the notion of blending rather than balancing, then please take a photo on your phone as you're listening right now. Go on, take a nice screenshot, stick it on your Insta story and tag me. I would love to know your takeaways, and I would love to see you sharing it with other women in business and other mums who you know could benefit. Going to take my croaky voice and have a big cough in a second. I appreciate you sticking with me and sticking with me through whatever I sound like on this week's episode. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next week.